everyone? Hello, hi, good afternoon, everyone. So once again, welcome to our first TEFL webinar series. Let me introduce myself. My name is Shanukrit Tingalia, or you can call me Oat. It is my pleasure to be your host and your moderator for today. Oh yes, it's already there. Okay, so but before we formally open today's talk, I would like to give some reminders. So let me share screen. So thank you so much for being so patient with us. Okay. So once again, welcome everyone to the first TEFL webinar series. Okay. And this is just a highlight for this coming up weekend. On Saturday, June 27th, we have Dr. Willie and Dr. Eun Sung Park, who's going to give a talk on top 10 habits of successful learners of English. And on Sunday, June 28th, we have Professor Paul Nations, and he's so kind and generous enough to give us a talk on what matters in vocabulary learning. But before that, today, I would like to give you some very warm welcome to this webinar workshop on quantitative and qualitative content analysis. What is coding today? All right, and here we go. To officially start today's session, I would like to call upon the director of the TEFL program, Assistant Professor Dr. Pompimon Sukhavati, for her opening speech.
Hi everyone. As we are facing coronavirus pandemic crisis as the global issue, and never before have we encountered educational disruption on such a scale. The educators around the world are looking for the best practice to ensure that learning never stops. TEFL webinar series is taking innovative actions to unlock solutions to respond to the situation. And we are trying to find means to support learners and teachers to keep on provisioning education at distance. In times like this, I'd like to express my appreciation to all educators in ELT who never give up on sharing knowledge to our learning community. Without their contributions, this project might not be possible. Moreover, I'd like to thank my colleagues, the TEFL committees, and the TEFL student team from the Faculty of Education for making the event happen. Distance never matters in education, and learning is lifelong. Welcome to our TEFL webinar series on Zoom.
Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Dr. Pompimon Sukhavati, our TEFL director. So now, as this is our closed sessions for only TEFL scholars, who's quite new to the research field. So today, it is our pleasure to welcome Assistant Professor Attapol Khamkhien. He's the full-time lecturer from Department of English, Faculty of Liberal Arts and Science, Kasetsat University, to share his expertise on the topic of the coding analysis. What is coding? Ajahn Attapol received his Ph.D. in English language teaching and applied linguistics from University of Warwick, UK. His research interests includes corpus linguistics, genre-based analysis, vocabulary instruction, language learning styles and strategies, EFL, and second language acquisition. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Ajahn Attapol, Assistant Professor Attapol Khamkhien, for this talk. Thank you very much and enjoy. Take it away, Ajahn Attapol.
Thank you, Claude, for the introduction, for a very warm welcome. And as you can see, do you see my slide?
Yes.
Yes, okay. As you can see that the my talk today to focus on the let me see.
Ajahn, yes.
Yes.
Can you
Okay.
share? Yes.
Yes. Okay. It's about the coding, and then it's deal with the main thing about the qualitative content analysis. And the main thing is that when I read the thesis, and then when I go to the examination like this defense, and I can see that so many students, right? So many students would like to show about the transcript and the excerpt from the interviews, and then they ask about the quoting and what is the quote or what's the meaning inside underlying the excerpts or the presentation, and that's the main question. And TEFL staff asked me to give this kind of lectures, and then the mainly go to how to quote and how to capture, how to interpret the meanings of the coding, something like that. So let me start with the thing before we go to the coding. The first thing is that when we do coding, we need adequate data. And most of the data that Thai students, I would say the Thai student must from the interviews or the people in our field from the interviews or the observation. And then this is the main thing that we should be take into consideration when we do the interviews. The first thing is that we need to put the interview at ease. This is because of if they feel like uncomfy and like they feel some pressure, the response or the interaction in the interview or during the interviews might be problematic, and the excerpt or the answer that you get might be, some the hidden meaning, and it's quite hard to call, I would say. I mean, later on when you code it, and it might be problematic for you. And the second one, we need to deal with the ethic, and I would say that the ethical issues is very important nowadays. And the first thing before the interviews, we need to explain about the purpose of the research of our research. Maybe research question and the purpose of the interviews clearly to the interviewee or the participants, so that they can get and they can have a picture, understand what you mean by the interviews during the interviews, and how they can share their experience or feelings about the questions. So this is very important thing. Okay, and the next one, yes, you need to give a chance, and most of the student, I would say, most of the student will start from asking the question, already asking a series of question because they already plan, and all the question were taken by the IOC people or anything, so that they will follow on the series of question, one by one. But the first thing before the interviews, maybe you need to warm up again, so that you can know the pace and the time, how you can give time, how you can maybe follow up like questions when you do the interviews with that interviewee too, so that this can go smoothly during the interview. And the question should be avoid leading questions, because it's some kind of like bias. Because you are the lead researcher, and this means that you know well what you want to get from the interviews, what you want to what the answer exactly you want to do, you want to get, so that this is very dangerous when you do it. And it means you cannot, maybe at the end of the day that you get, maybe you cannot get something like the evidence that is very negative, or the some negative comments, negative feeling from the interview. It can be possible. Okay, and the question should be direct, not ambiguous. And all the questions can be grouped And this in this way, it means if the question grouped clearly, and it means you can ask a series of questions and you can check across of the answers of the interviewees, and then you can see correlation and some links between question and questions, something like that at the end. And the next one is that because you interview, I'm sure that nowadays we use the recorders, right? And when we use a recorder, and it seems like we can get all the data, we can get all the answer quite easily. And this way, this thing, demonstrate to the interviewees that you follow all the times in the interviews, because if you are not, if you're not clear, if you don't understand about the answer, you can ask them, you can follow, ask further questions or further some more further data from the interviewees too. And it can help you when you code at the end. And next, you need to be sensitive to the interviewees' vocabulary, because if they are not in our field, maybe they can use different vocabulary, wordings, or different register, and then that is a time that you can ask further questions, or you can ask them to clarify or elicit more data from them. Because if you finish the interview and then you sometime or most of the time you cannot go back to that person and ask them what this is and what is that. And for sure, you cannot see, you cannot get the explicit answer after you leave from that interviews. And yes, and it's still with the terminology. So you can ask them to check your understanding if they use the terminology. And for us, again, we should avoid using terminology too, because if they are not in the field, like autonomy learning, so how can they understand what is meant by that? And in the interview, we can recap all the things, and you can check, all the mutual understanding between, our co-construction interviews, the answers of the answer from the interviewee, and you can check this by recap on the things that you understand is right, and that the data you can use it later on, blah blah blah. And next, you can, this is something like a manner, and something like we have to do in the time that we interview. So we need, we should give time for them to think as well, because no one, maybe, the pace and the space and the time and some kind like pressure, other variables can have influence on the interview too. So maybe we need, to give some time for them to think. And the question should be varied, because you can check across the data on the answers. And this is the next one is about the evaluations of the interviewee's contribution. At the time of interview, we cannot evaluate or access the interview by saying right, yes, and it's something like the word right and yes, maybe something you can use with the purpose like encouraging them to answer, to speak more, but not just respond that your answer is right or wrong. Because this is the thing, evaluation can be due later on once you start analyzing the data. That is our task, but not in the times of interview. Okay, and the next is about at the end, or maybe at the end of the interview, you can ask the interviewee to ask anything to add or ask some more questions if they want to. If you want to clarify, or if you want to go back and correct some answer, it can be possible. And more that first and foremost thing is that you have to listen all the time and concentrate on the interviews. And that is the thing when you do the interviews, you can get the data. It can be I know that this is quite, in general, but I would say that once you get the data, most of the time you cannot go back and then, interview them again. So good planning is very important in the interview. And next, if you do the observation is not just only, use the CCTV or videotape, and then you just note down what you see in the observation in the classroom for the TEFL students, but in your note or during the observation. So you have to do so many things in your note while the observation or observing the interaction between the teachers and student and student. The first thing is that you need to, open mind and see what happened. And this, cannot show, maybe, your videotape cannot plan all the scenarios, the things that happens in the classroom, but what you see in the real time, you can add this kind of question, this kind of data later when you do the evaluate or interpret the data. So you need to be open up and then see what happens, and then describe, note down all the things that happen in the class during the observation and what the interaction that happens. So we during the observation, you can see so many things, and this you have to note down. And at the time, for example, if you feel something and you see what happens in the classroom, you can interpret it because you have the feeling and you have some reflection on that as a real time, so that this kind of data can help you when you code it, when you interpret the data later on as well. And next, you have to be wonder. You have to wonder on things. You have to questions all the times what they do, what they act, and this kind of question can help you when you analyze as well, and can answer your research question. I don't know what the research question that you establish right at the beginning, but this thing, when you do it, it can help. And explain more when you note down the feeling, experience, belief, something like that, quantifying. So how many people are there, because it's small group of people and large group of people, small classroom, large classroom, middle classroom, so they are different. So this can be, like, for example, like interaction between or among students can be, vary or different, and this can help you. Dramatizing things. So for during the observation, so what is interesting? What's interesting here is what attracts you, what you interested in that, in that class, in that session. Experiment, if you do this, what happened? I mean, if you do both, I mean, act like researcher and teacher. So when you do the experiment, you can, reflect at the time, in the real time, or maybe later on after the class. And the last two ones, reflecting and assessing. So this is a thing like interpreting, but this means that you have to evaluate and reflect what you get from the what you perceive in the observation. Okay. Now, it's come to the topic here today. Qualitative content analysis. This is a thing that actually we usually hear the word qualitative content analysis, but I put it in the topic of my talk today is quantitative and qualitative content analysis, because I found that actually, basically, content analysis deal with two things, with the quantitative research and qualitative method. This is because after you get the data from the interviews or observation, so you plan to do, you select to do the content analysis, but it's that once you transcribe all the data, it's deal with a pile of data, and that means you are dealing with the quantitative research method, right? So maybe you can count the word frequency. You can count what thing happen most in that observation in the interviews, and that is mean you are dealing with the use of statistics as well. But right at the beginning, you start from the quantitative method because of the data, the pile of data, a lot of data. But then when you do the analysis, so you transcribe it. After you transcribe it, you do coding and turn the coding, group it into the categories, and then the meanings of each category, you have to summarize, you have to interpret it as a theme. And in that process of the analysis, it means we are dealing with the qualitative method. And next, if you not stopped at that stage, so you can go further by reporting or presenting the findings by using the studies, for example, like frequencies or the major things that happens, and then you can make claim at the end that your qualitative data can be summarized something like this with the statistics results. So that's why I put these two, quantitative and qualitative content analysis. And like this one, Morgan say that yes, at the beginning, right at the beginning, you're dealing with the quantitative analysis, and yes, it can be said like quantitative analysis of qualitative data. Okay, and next. What's the when you do the qualitative content analysis, it means that we are dealing with the interpretations of the characteristics of language as a communication. So what does this mean by this? It means it's from the method of the way data collections, the way you collect the data. For example, in the interviews, it means the cause construction between the interviewer and interviewees, and then what has happened during the conversation. And yes, qualitative content analysis is mean we are analyzing, we are coding we are coding data and then analyze the meanings or the meanings of the code or the meanings of the categories, what things happen, the context or the contextual meaning. So this is that so many things like belief, feelings, experience, or the data regarding your research questions or research purposes. So many things, and that is from the data. We have so many types of data or forms of the data. It can be verbal form, but I'm saying that from the verbal form, like conversation, you have to transcribe it. Maybe you write it down, or maybe type it and keep it on the computer. Narrative response, open-ended survey questions as well. At the end of the questionnaire, maybe you have the open-ended questions, and we can do the coding with the open-ended questions rather than just counting the percentage of what happened, blah blah blah. Interviews, focus groups, observation on the print media. Yes, we can do with the coding as well. And in the literature, some the people they say that the things that we get, like we call it like data, like film notes, videotapes, actually this is not the data. But once you start analyzing, once you do the analysis, yes, it can be the data. But before that, it's in the forms like what we call the documentary material. So be careful if you stick to, use the word the data, so you can use the word the data. But if you stick into this, how can I say, this kind of theory or this kind of approach, maybe you can say that from the documentary materials, the things that you get from the observation, blah, 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 and once you transcribe, we start analyzing it. Yes, it's turned into, it's become data, and we are playing with the data right now, later on, blah, 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 something like that. Okay. Now, I'm talking about the content analysis, and conventionally, we theoretically, we have three types of content analysis. The first one is what we call the conventional content analysis. Remember that the first thing, we got the data from interviews or observation, and next we transcribe it. We have a lot of data and a part of data, and we start analyzing. Now we are dealing with coding. And the coding here, we do the content analysis, means that we start read through the data, familiarize ourselves through the data. What's this mean? Well, what's this going on? What happened? What's the data is like from the interviews, from the observations, things like that. And with the conventional content analysis, so you analyze it without anything, but it's from your perception, it's from your perceived understanding from the data itself. So this means that we don't have anything, but we just analyze what is going on in your script, in your transcript, in your data. And this might be this can be useful if the theory or the literature doesn't say anything, or maybe like limit is the theory is quite limited, but you see some emerging theme or some emerging data, so you code it. What's it mean by that? Blah blah blah. You name the code from the data. You start from that point. And next, directed content analysis. Now, because when we conduct the interviews or the observation, we want to address the research question, and you know what is mean by that. You know what you want to get from the what you want to answer the research question, right? And it means that you have some theory or something that you get in your mind. So you start from that point, and then you try to find out the code or the evidence from that data. So it's mean compare these two things. Convention content analysis means that you start from reading the data and then code it. But direct content analysis, you know what you want to get, and then you stick to that, and then try to read and try to find out to serve or to meet the research questions or the other things that you have in your mind. And yes, again, if something happens or emerge in your data, so you can go back to the data and then create a new codes for that, create a new the new name, the new label for that as well. If you got the data, that's might be something that additional or further from you expect, something like that. You can, and that things that cause can be grouped as a new category as well. And the last one, some summative content analysis. So for the summative content analysis, mean that this kind of things deal with the quantitative as well, because you search for the keywords, and then you count keywords that happen in your data. And then this one must mean that if you know the purpose of your research, and you want to find out what these things or that thing, is if that thing is important for blah blah blah. So you can count the keywords, and then you can show the statistic to that to answer or to present the data as well. And this means that for the summative content analysis, means that we are focusing on the counting sequences of specific word, and that there is a quantitative. And once you get that statistic, so you need to find out, or you need to explain more by elaborate the meaning, or to analyze the meanings of that words, and this again deal with the qualitative method. So it's like the combinations of two things. You start from search for the keywords, and then you deal with the quantitative. And after you get the quantitative data or the statistics, you try to, explain the meanings of that quantitative or the words by using the qualitative method. But right, this is like a summary. This is like a conclusions or the summaries of these three approaches. So the conventional content analysis, yes, the code, the key differences from the code, how the initial code developed or created. For the first one, conventional content analysis, it's the code emerged from during when you do the data analysis. But the direct content analysis is from you have some category before, and then you read it. You try to match the data and put it in that category or code in that way. And for the thematic content analysis, so you are dealing with the keywords, and then you count on the frequencies, and again analyze the meanings or interpret the meanings underlying that keywords. Okay, but nowadays this is what I myself use these two words as well: inductive qualitative content analysis or the deductive content qualitative content analysis. I think these two words is something similar to the previous three approaches, in that for the inductive content analysis, yes, you see that during the while you read the text, so you have some codes, you know what is meant by that, and you want to code it. So it means at the beginning you don't have anything, but you read the data and then you code it, and after you code it, you group, refine the codes, and then create the category. So the category must be, have some meaning that big can cover all the codes. And the next step is about the theme, and this one, they call it like abstraction. The abstractions here mean, it's like the picture. So how you tell the story, what is going on, by using that code, that category, and the meaning behind that from your interpretations, from your analysis. And in general, yes, it must be, address a research topic or research questions as well. And next, deductive content analysis. Deductive content analysis means here, so you start from the categorization matrix. So it means that you have something in your mind, like I say, and you code the data and group the data into that category. And the data here, the code here depends on the aims of the studies, like I say. And again, you review the contents of codes and then try to group it, and then create the models or create the abstractions by explaining the meaning behind that. So in conclusion here, it means that we are dealing with three main stages, okay, for the inductive or deductive, or even three approaches as I explained earlier. So inductive here, you see that inductive here, we start from, familiarize ourselves with the data, and then we code it. Maybe you use a code sheet and group the codes and put it into the categories here, and evaluate or interpret the categorization by using abstractions on the theme here, and then you can tell the story at the end to show how you understand what you want the reader to understand the data from your observations or from your interviews. But for the deductive here, we start from categories, something in your mind, something from the research questions or from the research objectives, and then you code the data by group it with the structure categories, and then during this stage, you have to taste what is mean by that. Is this right or wrong? You can taste it by yourself, or maybe you can ask further. You can ask other persons, other researcher to help you. This is right or wrong, and then you can maybe you can consult with the literatures as well before you finalize and explain it by telling again the story. And this means for some student maybe from my experience can ask me like, so now what should I use between inductive content analysis or deductive content analysis? My answer is you can do both. And in my case, it's my PhD study, I use both as well. I mean, maybe I want to start from the inductive content analysis. But once I see the data, oh my gosh, because we have so many different opinions or feelings or responses. So maybe we have to go back and stick to the research question, what I want to get from that. So we start from inductive again, and then go back to the inductive. So it can be the combinations of these two approaches as well. Okay, is that clear? This is the reasons why the most people use a qualitative content analysis. And I would say that because the first thing is that the process is quite systematic, because you will know how you code it. You yourself as a researcher, you know how you code it and what the meanings of the code of each course, and why you say this and why you say that, the definitions of each categories, and at the end what's the meaning behind that, and the story, and what happened in the story. So it's the process that you when you analyze the data, and from maybe the small point and the middle, and why at the end, how can the data can tell you something, or the address research question. So this kind of process is very systematic. But the meanings of the course or each categories of the themes is from the researcher or the groups of researcher. Why I say that the group of researcher? Because you sometimes, if you are a student, so you work closely with your supervisors, and maybe your supervisors are kind enough and then can check your understandings about this code and blah blah blah, and maybe check understanding from the data too. So the code here is not from you yourself, but it's from a group of researchers, from your supervisors, from your co-workers as well. And because at the beginning we have the large piles of the data, so this means this process can help reduce the data to the abstract description, and it's better to see the whole picture after you do the content analysis, this kind of analysis. Okay, so now it seems that we are dealing with the three terms: course, content, theme, and categories as well, I would say. Now the coding. Okay, now we go to the process of coding. Coding here is it can be just one word or phrase or something like that. It's it's the action that you divide the data into manageable segments. And I would say that you can do so many approaches, so many ways of how to sort the data. For example, you can use the Excel sheet, divide the data into the first person 1, person 2, person 3, person 4, and then you try to analyze the data in a manageable way. But for this thing, I would say that it depends on the researcher. It depends on you, how you familiarize with the with the way that you sort the data. For some people, you can sort it into files, and then it's very easy to see that, okay, this kind of it depends on this data from the first question, this data from the second question. It depends. But coding is once you code it, you have two manageable segments of this thing, and the coding here is you are analyzing the data from the text. the text data. And the process will start with the data and then generate the codes and then the theme. This is what you already know that. Yes, short words and phrase can be, something that you perceive is important to your research, to your study, and it's important data that you can get or capture capture things can have the meaning, and then you can elaborate later on. That is a code. So the code, you can have a lot of codes at the beginning, I would say, and what we call the initial codes. And the initial codes here, you cannot say this is a theme and this can be, might not be helpful, because once you got the initial codes, later you have to go back and regroup and refine these initial codes and turn into codes. And again, once the course is too, you have too many codes, so you have to regroup and refine it again until you are satisfied with the course, and then you see that yes, I can see the meaning behind underlying that cause or behind the cause, and then you can explain more what is that. And this is a Bible for me, and I think for the qualitative persons as well, sadhana. So this textbook can help you with the coding, how you code it, and they have the code phase. The for code phase here is mean, you can start with category, and sadhana provide a lot of code phases in that books as well, and then you can consult with this book. Next, once you get the code, yes, you have to, you are working with the higher level of organization. So you are getting the categories and then themes. And this means that you can see the hierarchy of so many codes, and then you can group it into one themes, for example, something like that. And what about the content here? Why I say the contents? If you can remember at the beginning, so the contents here is me. I emphasize the things that I highlight at the beginning is that it's from the data from the interviews or the observation is very useful at the end, because somehow the coding, like the things from your recordings, cannot tell you what the feeling or what kind of feeling, what kind of belief at that time. So the content, is the umbrella term that cover all the things like the whole enterprise. The relationship between the interviewer and interviewees. This kind of thing can have the influence, can have the impact on your data as well. And when you do the interview, it means it's social construction. No higher level, no lower level, but we have to converse and extract as much as possible of the data so that you can get the later on. And this data, you can code this kind of data, or you can use this kind of data when you interpret the meanings from your themes, or from the categories, or from the course as well. And yes, so now before that is about the three things from the content analysis. And here, this is the process of the analysis. So once you get the data, yes, we start from the collecting data. Yes, now you have to sit with a lot of data on your desk and think about the data, the aim of the project, the aim of the research question. Maybe this can help you form. This can help you shape the categories as well, and this can help you think about the code, what it should be, something like that, and anything that emerge from the data. And for the categories, once you think that, and then you can, once you caught it, I would recommend that you have to read the data and code until the end, and then go to sleep. Leave from your office, your desk for 1 day or 2, and then go back again to see the course is okay, the course is correct, and maybe you have to regroup it, and then if you're so sure about the course, and then you can start to assign the categories. And the note from your field notes, the note from your from your memo can help you reflect on the categories. And that's why I start my talk with the way that you do the interviews and the observation. So your notes can help you in this stage. And the comments, maybe you have some comments when you do the coding. You have some insights on that, right? And next, again, you have to organize again. Organize here is mean, you have to show the relationship or the link between each categories. So here, you can see, once you get the category, you can see different perspective, or you can zoom out yourself, and then you see the data from different perspectives. It can be possible because you are about to explain or tell the story. So this might reflect something, and then you are trying to to see the data from the perspective that you want to address the research questions. And then you can see some relationship of the categories, of each categories. And then the next one, you try to connect this category with with the concept, with the theory from the literatures, and try to explain and give them the word that I use, give the meanings and reflect on that. And perhaps, unfortunately, if you cannot answer or address a research question, yes, it's time. Maybe you have to collect further data, and that can be, sometimes like a nightmare for a researcher, because it's, if the data cannot reflect something or address a research question, but it's the way that you have to do. So now we start with the coding. Yes, you have to transcribe it, print out the data, right? You store in the computer, print out the data, read through the data, and now coding start. So you have to underline, or maybe use different colors colors of highlighters to the text, the passages of text. Maybe if you perceive something that emerged during the coding, you can put the post-it right away on that code, and then you name the code. And I would say that naming the codes, naming the themes here, or naming categories is very difficult stage, because you have to think about the words that can cover the meanings, that can explain the meanings of each code inside. So this is very important, and the codes here, or the category, must be again answer the research question, and then you have to write codes. Okay, and here this is in summary. So we start from the data collection, right? And then you get the data, and once you analyze the data, yes, you can think about the aims of the project, research questions, research objectives. But the data itself can have emerging themes or emerging data, emerging some important point that you don't know before. Then you try to code it. During this stage, you get the code, and then once you get the code, you try to group it into the categories. And once you get the category, you go into the analysis again. But now you have to interpret each categories by maybe using the research questions, maybe using your notes to help you explain the meanings, and again literature or the theory to help you explain what's inside of your data. And then you can get the abstractions here. So it can turn into the conceptual framework, and it means that it captures other things. And this is the way that you are going to tell the story to your reader, to your listener, something like that. Okay. Yes. Now we are about the initial coding. So initial coding, yes, like I say, you have to be open mind, and you code it freely. You don't to think about anything right now, but you just code it, see it, yeah, what things that you perceive, and then you don't stop the coding at this stage to see how many labels, how many codes that you get, and then you can regroup later on. But in here you have to work line by line. Why I say that line by line here, I will show you later on, because it can be difficult at the end if you don't work line by line. Because when you do the presentation or writing up, so it might be a maze for you. I mean, the code can be at a different line, and then it's way harder to find out if you do it manually, by hand. And here, this is this is a form of the coding. For example, here this is the example. Once you transcribed and you get the data here, right? So you start from reading through it line by line, and then you get the code. It can be, like here, maybe you can see, okay, now my research objective is about the autonomous as well, or the teachings or learning interaction, blah, blah, blah. So you can see, yes, the word autonomous learner here, this is a keyword. And then it's, maybe at the margin, in the margin, blah, blah, blah. And this is, again, the learning styles. And you think it's relevant to your research objective as well. So you code it. If you use the Word documents or the Excel sheet, so maybe you can use a highlighter with different colors, blah, 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 to show that. Okay, and next, like just felt or laughing, this is the share feelings, something like that. Individual freedom that we went along with, we just had the freedom in the world, blah, blah, blah. So you have initial causes, so many initial causes here. But again, you have to note down every word that you can think of right at that time. And it can help you later, but once you conceive all the things, or want to explain all the things, and that at that time, you need to go back and then group it. Now, categories. So once you get so many codes here, the bigger word that can cover all the codes is category, right? So now just, a small, wow, sorry for this. That's the answer. For this one, if you got the once you've got the codes like data, memos, notes, observation, theoretical context, ideas from readings. Yes, thinking about the naming the codes is quite hard, but thinking about the namings of the categories is harder, because you need to find, or you need to name label these words, group these words into one word or one phrase, and that word or phrase must be address the research question. And now I got the word source. Okay, Any suggestion for you from you? Data, memos, notes, observation, theoretical context, idea from reading. So what else of category that you can think of? The covers or the meanings of here? Hello?
Hi guys, so feel free to participate in this talk.
Ruot, you can help me?
Yes, let's see. So we got our TEFL friends here. So anyone would like to try?
Data, memos, notes, observation, theoretical context, ideas from reading.
Your question is that where some other sources?
No. What's the word that can cover the meanings of this one? I mean, this, the bullet point here is already called. I mean, the labels of the code. And then how can you label? Yes, one word or one phrase that can cover the meanings here.
I see. Okay, so these are the coding that you right here: data, memos, notes, observation.
Yeah, these are called. Yeah, these
so
are
now we have to find categories. So how do you label this into the big umbrella? What is the category?
You know what? At the beginning, I think about the word like methods or approach because I see the word observations or notes or memos, blah blah blah. But the word method or approach here kind of answers, kind of cover the words rhetorical context, theoretical context. So that's why I have to change it to a source. And like I say, that naming the course is hard, but naming the categories is harder.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's like the course is from, you can call it freely, and then you can write it down anything that you can think of at that moment when you in the coding process. But for the categories mean that you have to think a lot and then try to find out the words or phrases that can cover some of the course that you get previously. So it's very hard. What about this one? Analysis, reflection, ideas generation, brainstorming.
Okay. So analysis,
reflection, ideas generation.
Output.
Output.
Okay. Yeah. Piercing one say output.
Yeah, can be. And again, it depends, it depends on your research questions or research objectives as well. I mean, if you want to see the outputs, but this that these words, emerge from the data. I get the word approach.
Oh, I see. I see.
So it depends. I mean, it depends, if these categories and you can explain the meanings later on to, to address or to answer the research questions that you set forward. Okay, move on. So after coding, we are dealing with the thematic analysis, and most of the people will do these two things. I mean, content analysis and the thematic analysis simultaneously. Because thematic is bigger umbrella of the like you say the bigger umbrella of the word of the coding or the content analysis. So again, you have to reread and reread again after once you have got the course, initial course, right? And again, once you got the course, then you have to see some relationships or some link of each course as well to explain the meaning. And yes, now label the theme. Why we say that label the themes, search for the themes here again, all the data that relevant to each potential themes here must be described, must be defined later when you describe the data, when you write up, when you present your data as well. And these themes will, cover all the things, all the data that you get. And I myself usually the theme like labeling, like hating in my thesis, in my work, in the piece of my writing. For example, like 4.1 was a theme that is very easy for that. And then I can describe later, what is going on in that theme from the codes, from the categories. That is a trick for you. The last one, yes, you have to reviewing the theme here. So, which ones should come first, which one should come later, because maybe when you're writing up, you need to organize the first interest, the first important one, the most interesting one, right first, blah blah blah. So you have to review it, and then you have to organize, sort it, the theme. Okay. Defining naming. The last one is about the producing the report. Here, again, before we use the theme, yes, again, you need to, relate it to your research question and literatures as well. So that, for the TEFL students, again, when you write this one in the chapter 4, write the results. So once you, relate it to the literature, it's very easy to make a discussion in chapter 5, discussion, conclusion, something like that. Okay, when you search for the themes, and this is just tips for you. The themes here, maybe you can look from, something repeated. Repetitions, that is the recurring topics, or, the most important topic that you can say. And you can say that that is the major thing, happens or emerge from your data, and you can use this as a theme. It's not it's not just a frequency, but they have some important meaning from repetitions of the interviewees, repetitions of the data, and that's why we count this as theme. And the next one, the theme can be something that you are unfamiliar with. And this is very interesting because, your research will be, something like novel, because it's not repeat to the literature, but something you are familiar, you are unfamiliar, and it might be new things that you cover in your thesis or in your research. And the next one, theme, that can be something like the words or the phrase that the participants or your informant use, but it's not directly used. It can be a metaphor, it can be the analogy as well. So that the word metaphor here is mean well that we use the less words, but the meanings can cover lots of things, and you can use this as a theme. And the theme can be something like a transition. How you can manage it, from one story to another story, like I say, from one point to another point, and that's the theme. And the theme can be something, similarities and differences as well. The theme can be, linguistic connectors. What does this mean by linguistic connector here? It's emerged from the conversations and the talks between you as an interviewer and the interviewees. And you can see, some connections like from one point to another point, and that can be the theme, in the gap, it can be the theme. And the next one is, this is very important. I mean, for example, like, you have a lot of data, but when you compare it, when you consult with the literature, so there might be something that missing from your data, from your, from the literature, and that might be, the interesting one. It can be something like novel. It can be something like news in the fields as well. Who knows, right? And the next one, the last one, is can be something that related to the theory. Yes, that themes can be used to support the theory, blah blah blah. When you make the comparisons with the with the literature, and that is a way that you can use as a theme. Okay, now here is these slides will capture other things about the content analysis or qualitative content analysis. So we start from the read through the data, right? Either we use inductive or deductive content analysis, but we got the codes, okay? We got the codes, and we have so many codes here. And once you go back to read the course, yes, you have to regroup it, refine it. You can get the categories. And once you get the categories, you need to describe in broader perspective and the idea that is the theme. So you can see the relationship of these three terms here, called categories and themes, and that can help you when you explain, present the data. Okay. Now, it's cherry picking. You know the word cherry picking here. And I would say that cherry picking is something like, it can occur at all times when you do the interviews and when you do the observation. I mean, some people, if they don't have the if they don't have the adequate data, maybe you know your data is quite limited, right? You will dig out any data, anything that emerge, like emergent themes or emergent causes from your data, but it's you have to admit that it's from the superficial treatment, it's from not good treatment right at the beginning, but you are going to select something and present to the reader. It's from maybe you interview just only once. It's from maybe not a good research design, but it's from our control, or maybe not good planning when you do before you do the interviews. Maybe your interviews is like, we got the guided questions, but once you interpret the data you get, have some missing point, missing perspective, because lots of the people use a structured interview, semi-structured interview, as it means you have a prompt question, but the prompt questions means something like, each participant is say yes, yes, yes. But at the end, when you do the analysis, you cannot explore anything new, because all the people say yes, but you need to clarify more. So this kind of thing, like prompt questions here, and the questions maybe not, it's not possible all the time that you use yes no question. It should be the WH question and need some follow-up questions as well, right? And the next, you just select the examples to suit your research question. That is the word cherry picking. But I would say that you need to avoid the cherry picking here. But what can we do if we don't have the adequate data before doing coding? Yes, the first thing is that if you don't have time, or if you don't have any opportunity to go back to that person, maybe you can use member validations as well. I mean, for example, like I myself, I'm in the fields of ELT and Kruger in the field of ELT as well. So once I finish interviewing one person, but I cannot go back to that person's or that person, I can ask other perspective to carry from the to clarify my understanding, or to help me interpret, or maybe to get the data. But this is a trick. This is a trick. I don't recommend. I don't highly recommend it to do. But how can I say? If it happens, if yes, please do. You can do with the go to another member and use class validation, something like that. And yes, from the answers of member validation, so I have to do the constant comparisons. Once I analyze the code, analyze data and get the codes from that person's already. I have to code the data from cohort as well to look for, something new, something relationship as well, so that you can see, some missing point or some, supportive data, some maybe, new things that can emerge from the interview, if possible. And the last one, again, this is a tip. The last one is, you can find this, then you can seek for, negative evidence, because it can help you explain, it can help you discuss your data, why it should be like this and why not like that. And this can, help improve the quality of your data. Maybe you can compare it with your literature, you can compare it with your experience, with your feeling during the day, during the interviews. It can be, but I would say that's is, the matters of cherry picking. Now, before that, I show you about, the coding and how you use you use some kind of cheat or some document, document or the Excels to do the analysis, and yes, manually with, by hand. But here, this is the software or the program that I use. That's just very sorry, because my program on my software in Vivo now is already expired. But I can capture some, I can show you some, and it's very easy. And you can go to the in Vivo if you are interested, or if you are, if you are conducting the research like a qualitative, using the qualitative techniques. So you can, I recommend that you use NVivo. And now I think NVivo 12, we use it right now. So once you get the data, right, you have the NVivo. Yes, you can import all the data using the files, by using soft files, and then you can upload it to the programs or the software. For example, I got the participant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and how many people you already uploaded to each person, and then you can do coding in this software. And it's very helpful because you don't need to buy, different highlighter to see, or it can help you organize certain things, okay? But before that, you need, maybe some people like to read it on screen, but some people like to read it, from paper. So again, what matters of the fact, you have to read the data. And then maybe if for the eyesight, maybe you can highlight it on the paper, or maybe you can highlight it on the software. But in the NVivo, the word code or coding, or doing coding here, they use the word node, N-O-D-E, node here, okay? And here in the software, you can use NVivo to do coding, and then you get codes, and then later on, you can get the categories as well. And this is what the software look like. So once you import all the files here, you can see this is Anna, Benedict, blah blah blah, and you can see the software can read both the Excel's documents and the PDF files as well. But all the things that is from if from the interview, you have to transcribe it and then upload it, and then you can see. Quick access here. We have files, memos, and notes, and that is the functions, or that is the order that I use frequently. And the file classification and the word codes here. Yes, you see this is a coding, and then you can use the word note here. What you have to do with here, right after uploading the files or uploading data. So you can see that. If you have the codes in your mind already, you can name the code here, and you can rename it, anytime that you want. Okay, by click create a notes, and then you can insert. You can put the name so many names of the codes here, and you can see the hierarchy here. If I say the code A and the code A1, and if you drag the code A1 to the code A, yes, it will be under the code A. And after that, once you do the classification, you can see the hierarchy. What's meant by that? Now it's something look like this. And each files, once you upload the files and you do the, you're going to do the coding. So you just, it's very easy if you read from the screen, and then you just, highlight the parts, and then you just click, or maybe drag it to the nodes, and then you can drag it to the code A, code B, code C here. It's very easy. And once you highlight it, okay, if you have so many things here, so maybe you to how can I say, each course that you want, okay? And yes, once you drag the highlight part into the course, for example, the names of the code here on the level is use of time. So you can see the frequency, the file ones here from Anna, blah, blah, blah. You can click it and then go back to the Anna. And you can see the reference, how many the frequencies of the words, the frequencies of this code that appear or occur in the data as well. And this can help you. And this is where, basic things that you can do with the in vivo. And I would say that you can see so many tutorials from YouTube, and it's not the difficult program if you have the data, systematic data already, and it's very easy for you. Even the classifications like the demographic data, so you can do it like here. You can label it by using the classifications, and then you add the names of the data that you want, the name, gender, occupation, blah blah blah, so that you can go back, and then if you analyze this data very delicately, so it's very helpful for you at the end, I would say. And the word frequency, this is if you can remember at the beginning, we are dealing with the qualitative data, right? But at the end, you can show it like frequencies of the words. If you want, or if you like, or you can show statistics of the data as well. So we use the query function in vivo, and yes, in vivo can generate word crowns. I think most of you familiar with the word crowns, and then it's very easy to use for the presentation. And yes, you can import the diagram to show the classifications or the hierarchical structure once you code it in your presentations as well. For example, here, if you use the functions of query here, and then you can see what frequency query, and that's the default one, 100 more frequency occur in the data. So maybe you can just delete it, and then say like 5, 10, it depends on you. And you can select the files as well. You can select the items to, maybe if you want to compare between Claude and I, who say this more, who think about this one more, so you can do it. And then again, this is very interesting because the previous version cannot do something like this. For example, you can match exactly the word like talking, use lemma in the linguistic terms. I mean, maybe was talking, is talking about, blah blah blah. Yes, or even synonyms, you can do it, right? And then it can generate so many things here. And at the end, if you do the frequency here with frequency, and it's generated already, you can do the word crowns by creating it. It has so many forms here. Wow. Just play with the system, just play with the software, and then you can see, it can help your life easier, I would say. And maybe this word crowds is used for the presentation, but in in your thesis, maybe you can show something like this, like the hierarchical, something like this from your coding. Okay, this is not research question. You start with the research question, and this is theme, and then from the descending, you can see this is sub theme or maybe subcategories, and it depends on you how you can code it, I would say, and it depends on the code respond or correspond to the address the research question. Okay. Before that, before I go beyond here about the writing up, so the this one, if you don't, wow, I'm not into the technology, so I myself to do it. Yes, you can do with something like this with the with the online technologies as well. Yes, once you, for example, if you do something like this, I mean, once you get the data and then you have to, this is something like a notes. After coding, you got the theme, you count it with your hand, and then you interpret the meaning, and then you evidence this is from the highlight part, right? So you can, sort these files for your further reference in your thesis, in your paper, it can be. But if you want to do something like a presentation, so you can go, now you have the frequency, right? So you can go to this one, worldwide.net, and then just key, use the create function and key on the words that you get from your data. And yes, you turn it into the word clouds as well. And this one is very helpful for you if you don't use the Vivo software. Okay, and here about the writing up, we come to the end, I think. Oh wow. Writing up here, I mean, this is the hardest part for me when I do the thesis, because it's like before I came up with the numbers of the course, number of revised course, the numbers of the categories. So we have to go through so many processes and reread, rethink, regroup, refine again and again and again. But this is for my thesis. I can show you that yes, we have to start from to make sure that your readers or your committee, this committee, you need to convince them that what you did, what you have done in the thesis, how struggle you have go through something like that. And here you start from you familiarize yourself with the data, and then the coding began with because I myself want my research objective want to see how difficulties in preparing manuscript for publication. So the data that I get from the interviews, I need to read through them, highlight them in our section, and yes, because we have the research question, we have predetermined categories. Yes, and after during read through, I have some possible codes. And possible codes after revise, yes, I can see, just at that time, two other categories from, apart from the research question. And once I read through it, blah, 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 and this thing emerged, yes, it can be new codes. And yes, once you have to refine it, yes, you have to go back and read through again, try to refine it. And yes, maybe you can, from the predetermined codes, I mean, they identify the code, so maybe you need to re-level and drop some because something may be overlapping, or maybe like regroup it. Okay, and yes, we have to do some rearrangement, reclassification. Which one should come first? Because we get so many data from a lot of participants, and some can be different, some can be similar, so that I have to rearrange and reclassification. And the code here, after drop it, after relabel it, yes, we have to revise this again, regroup it again to see the relationships. And this thing is like, recaps all the things that you have done, and then reorganize the subcategories. Why use a subcategory here? Because, the new codes here emerge, and after the regroup, it can be, something like subcategory, and subcategory can have the codes, a lot of codes. So that is something like structure that you can get codes, subcategory 1, subcategory 2, and codes. And subcategory can be grouped into category, and category can be must be grouped into a theme, blah blah blah. And next, you have to for the qualitative one, it's very interesting and it's very useful if you can say that, after recheck course definition, yes, you have to do you have to give the definitions of each course after refinement, and then the process of the qualitative content analysis here, we check the concept level and linking group of concepts. So you arrive at how many courses here, comprising individual courses. 36 individual courses, but comprising 28 courses with a lot from the questions and 8 emerging courses. This is new from the one that I perceive, or from the things that I perceived earlier from the research questions or research objectives. And yes, maybe or it should be that if you say something like this, you have to show the coding scheme, the coding category, to show that what the definitions of each course, what is meant by that. And yes, to show some examples of the code into transcripts as well. So you see that it's not just, presenting the excerpts from the interview. It's not just only the examples of the interview transcript, but we do something that is very systematic. And what is meant by here, coding categories and the coded interviews. Yes, you can see that. This is from my appendix. So the coding in categories and definitions, we have to describe so many things here about the process of coding. We start from the coding protocol. What is meant by coding protocol here? We have to, it's something like the concept when before you code it down, you code it down to the data. So the code we begin with the when the informant start responding to question tasks. It's not just from my question, but from them. Each clause is applied by content. It's not from anywhere else. This is a protocol, and the code section ends when the contents of topic changes. You can change the code, you can change the names of the codes after the topic change. Okay, if a same topic return, because it's a new example, just example, but not the new code, right? The evidence. The coding categories can overlap if more than one features appear in one text segment. Yes, coding category can be because can be overlap because it's like the data maybe from the people, more than one people or more than two people, so it can be overlap, but it depends on how you organize or rearrange it. And here, yes, this is the category that I get. Once you see you get the categories, or once you get the codes here, so this is this is a real code. The word or the phrase that I come up with at the end. But when I do coding, so use short form or abbreviated forms for some for the margin that can, you know, the margins of that paper, or even, you know, just feel free to do it when you think about this thing and select research topic, and it's mean, you know, definitions of this one, the definitions of selecting research topic, and this code is under subcategory 1 because these codes have the meaning like difficulty research, related to article writing process. And again, for the subcategory 2, dealing with linguistic difficulties, dealing with the comments, selecting appropriate journal. So this subcategory, number 1 to number 4, is about the difficulties, right? So I grouped it as a big category, like concerns about writing research manuscript. So in this way, it can, you know, before I get this category, the names or the level of this category is very hard, but you have to work, and you have to work with all these codes all the time, blah, 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 so many codes, because like, if you don't understand, or if you don't, you know, get into these codes, so it's very hard to name even subcategory or to name the category, right? And this is examples of interview transcript coding. So why at the beginning I say that you have to work line by line, and you have to read through line by line, right? So this is once you turn it into the transcript. So it's very important thing that you need to, you know, label the numbers of lines that you get from that. Again, I use, you know, the numbers of codes here to mark it, but during coding, I don't use the numbers of code. But this is, you know, this is from once I finish regrouping or refining all the codes already, so that you can put, you know, the numbers of the code, and you can respond to how many codes that you get after regrouping or initial codes or the codes, blah blah blah. So this is the one that you need to make sure right after coding, and then you can put the numbers of this. And yes, it's the form, you know, this is a form of writing up when you do with the qualitative content analysis. You have to show this so that, you know, your reader can make sure that all the data or your presentation, all the findings that you get is reliable, and it's trustworthiness, something like that. It's trustworthy because it went through the systematic process. You have to show something like this. And this one come to the, you know, the last of my talk. And here, yes, the coding is the building block of all qualitative analysis. If you do with the qualitative analysis, you have to do the coding. And the approach selected in coding depends on the research objectives. Like I say, it depends, you know, you can use inductive content analysis, deductive content analysis, or you can do the combinations of these two approaches. It depends on the research objectives. Because I myself, when I did the coding, I can see the new codes all the time. But once I started, I have so many codes, and it's very hard for me categorize them into one category or one thing. So I have to go back to the research questions or to the research objectives, and maybe I have to start, you know, go back and start with the block of predetermined categories as well. And it depends on the types of data. I mean, if you, for example, if you use this is from the interview, but if you use the observation, it's very hard and it's, or even you have to use the ground theory, you have to do the field notes, and then it's very hard to do the transcripts, to do the transcription, because the observation is from, you know, video. But if you just focus on the interaction, for example, between the student and student. How can you make sure that the data that you got from the students, is you have a good quality, and then you can transcribe it correctly, right? So it's very hard in that sense. And then the type of data can be, can lead to, some difficulties when you do the coding. And that's why I say that during the data, you have to make notes, you have to synthesize, you have to reflect, you have to, interpret what is going on at that time, blah, blah, blah. And the last one, yes, again, the content analysis is the analytical approach that you have to think about the research question. And again, first of all, you have to plan your research design very, 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 very well, so that you can get the data and adequate data for doing the coding. If not, cherry picking coming to your answer, right? And that is not good. But I don't know. But maybe we had to do that in a sense, like if we cannot go to interview that person again. Okay, that is from my point about the coding. Actually, there is nothing much, but depends on how you code it, and it depends on how you address your research question and name the codes. That's where it takes time, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Ajahn Attapol, for this talk. Thank you. So now I think it's time. We have about 15-20 minutes for your questions. And right now we have the first question from Pising Won. He basically said that you have any suggestion for the researcher who wants to conduct the interview for someone that, they're not in this field, and we do not have the prompt question. So basically it's more like an open-ended question. How would you, as a seasoned researcher, give us some advice as a novice teacher, how to start an interview?
I would say that basically maybe you start asking the question with your friends or colleagues first. To maybe you get the series of questions already, and then you can try out that questions works or not. And if they hearing the feedback from your colleagues, or maybe you can just ask the people who have the same characteristics with the informant that you want to ask them. So maybe you can you can see that how difficult your questions can be in the real interview, or maybe you need actually in the in doing research we need some kind of like validation from expert. And I would say that before we, even though that we pass, we get the validity from the expert, but before we use the question, you can try out that questions as well. You can see the space of the question, how you can use the how you can ask a question. Maybe I would say like if you use the question with the students, but students have not the same level of proficiency, maybe you need to revert, or maybe you need to alternate your question, but with the same same objectives or same
Meaning,
purpose of the
objective, yes.
questions. Yeah, something like that. So that is and that is the thing that you can do. But again, I would say that it depends on how you plan well with the interview, because once you interview it means that it's very hard to get back and then you get the same answer from that person. I mean, the same word or the same feeling like the first time, the first impression when once they answer your questions. It's very hard.
I
So
see.
yeah, and
So, I
need
think,
some
yeah.
practice. Mhm.
Yes, okay. So piercing one, as Ajahn say, I think we need to just practice, and also
Mhm.
I think it would be a good idea to have the questions ready first and practice and try to use it, you know, with your friends first before, because if you not have prompts, that means you don't have the objective of the interview. So I think it would be nicer to have the
I'm not sure about the way that you say that you don't have prompt questions or something like that. But
yeah,
I would say that if you don't have a prompt question, but you
it's
have
okay.
some research questions or research purposes in your mind, right?
Uh-huh.
Maybe you can like informal conversation can be something
Yeah.
representative as well. So that can help because we have so many types of the interviews: telephone interviewing, email interviewing, but it depends on how you can you know um, how you can what can I say? How you can make sure, or how you can sure that these things or the answer that you get, can convince other people if you use some, alternative methods of interview. Because most of the people we say that, you need, informal situation, blah blah blah, formal situation, structure questions, semi-structured interview, blah blah blah. But it depends on how you, yes, something like that, how you can assure, how can you convince them that your answer is reliable.
Right. I think
May,
that's also
may, may I may I say something?
yes. Please go on. Go ahead. If Ajahn can
Actually, I just want to
share it.
clarify. I just want to clarify my question. My question is, thank you for the presentation first. My question is, without the prompts given to the without given to the interviewees, and the interviewees are the graduates, and they are not really in the field of teaching. And the question, as Ajahn said, that if we give the prompts, for example, like yes, no, or some points to the interview in advance, the answers that we get might be not really reliable. So that's why I come up with this question. So the answer, like Ajahn mentioned, is we need to try it out first. Yeah. Thank you.
Again, you need to go back to how you select the participants.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you say that, this is a representative of the group of the participants, so you have to stick on the answer because it's from them, it's from that person. We cannot say that this might not be relevant to this question, but some can be answered, but some cannot be answered to the research question, but it can be relevant to the new ideas or the new or the theory behind. If you if you compare with the literature, and you can see many insights from that things as well. So it can be like a guided theory. I'm not sure about that, but I would say that if something new, or if you don't have prompt the question, maybe guide theory can help you in that way, because you can discover new things all the time, right? I mean, if you select that person for the interview already, it means that person must be or should be representative to the group of the participants, and you have to respect to the answers of that interviewee as well.
Yeah. That's why when the answer sometimes not really,
My friends topics, research topic, PhD topics is very interesting, I would say, because I think that you are afraid of the resources, how can be generalized, or how can we convince other people that the data on the things that you are going to do is reliable or not. My friend from Warwick did the research about the conversation in the not in the meeting room, but in the kitchen.
Wow, interesting.
You see, and you can imagine that international student in one flat in the UK come from so many levels, so many class from not in the fields as well, but they just say once they come into the cooking room, yes, what's happened and what's the interaction between this this group of people. It's very interesting. It can be reliable if you can show them what the systematic that you analyze, because its data is there, but how you can present the data, that is very important thing. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So any other questions? You can feel free to, maybe unmute and ask the question directly to Ajahn, or you can type the question right here. So we are basically, most of us will be doing thesis at the master degree level. So do you have any suggestions in terms of the research question? What kind of research question that would be good for the qualitative method like this? Because I think we're more familiar with the quantitative, perhaps, more or less. We still new to both, but we wanna try to encourage more of the our graduates to go with the qualitative approach.
Like Ajahn Bim say, right? Ajahn Bim and Ajahn Jung say, okay, so the question that we use in the interview should not be something simply like a yes/no question, because your answer is something is real simple as well. It's real simple as well, like yes and no. And maybe you know well that it's sometimes quite hard to ask them to clarify the answers, what is meant by that. And then you need to exercise at what time that if you ask them to clarify the answer, so you need to exercise at what time allocate that you can talk with them. Not, basically we don't interview the people like long last like 2 hours or 1 hour and a half, but just 30 minutes. If, for example, if you go to the neighborhood and then interview them, yes, maybe they can give you just only 10 minutes. But you set the prompt, the prompt questions or the guided question like last for suitable for 30 minutes. How can you go? How can you deal with this kind of difficulties? You just select some questions and ask them or not, and that is not good, because the answers cannot be comparable to the other people in your research as well. So that's the thing that you need first, and that's why I say that you need to do something like the ethics before the interview. You have to say that the interview will last like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, so that we can ask them for permission to for the interview time. It's not pressure. You give them some time to think, blah blah blah, and then you have to. Yes, it's again the practicing, and there's no question that's mean, all the times that not useful, but it can be like something you can use with the recap to make sure that all the things that you understand from the interviews is right, blah blah blah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I have another question, and this one is from Pat. If we ask the participants to write the answers to answer the open-ended questions instead of an interview, what can be the limitations, and would the ways to analyze different? So is it different from the interview? What are the suggestions to do with those written answers?
Okay, for the open-ended questions here, I think most of the people like to, recheck with the quantitative or the survey in your questionnaires already. But maybe, it depends. I mean, if your research questions need to get data or get the answers more on what perspective you can start writing, or you can start creating the question from that point. What things that you need to know more apart from the qualitative data, right? That is an open-ended question, but it can be repeated something if you want to recheck, the answers from the quantitative part. yes, that can be, and that can be the limitation, because it cannot say anything, just say that, okay, it's right, because it shows something like this, just only that. So that can be a limitation. And again, this is a it depends on the research question. If you want to know something more, you can use the open-ended question. And I think that is the purpose of the open-ended question. Recheck and need to see something more. Would a way to analyze different from the interview? Yes, again, with the open-ended question, you can use the code, you can do the coding as well. I mean, if you want to support the data or the answers from the open-ended interview using the quantitative statistics, you can use the frequency. And if your purpose of the open-ended question part here is to extend more, if to elicit more, yes, you can do the code and then elaborate more, give the meaning, not just saying that this person say like this person say like this, and you can give and you can interpret all the questions or the answer, not questions, sorry. What are the suggestions to deal with the written answer? Analyze it. My suggestion is like related again, and maybe you can separate, you can start from positive answer, negative answer, similarities and similarities and differences, something like that. You can do so many things, but again, it depends on what you want to find out. And I would say, with those written answer, all the things, the data from the interviews, the data from the observation, the data from the field notes, you have to turn it into the written form, and then you have to keep it in your computer. You have to upload it in your NVivo. So yes, at the end you have to analyze it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So now I think we have only like 4 minutes left. Let's see. I have Pisangwon's questions here, so I'll take it as the last one. Okay. His research objective is to see the improvement of students' writing during the process of teaching within 16 weeks. Is content analysis of their writing for his qualitative data appropriate, adding more validity and reliability on top of the testing?
Let me see. My research objective is to see the improvement. Is content analysis on my qualitative appropriate, adding more value on top. Yes. I'm not sure what's its content analysis. Content analysis that you mean here, the data is from writing itself, or reflexive journals, or the progressive work, or even the reflexive something, to show that apart from testing like quantitative data, you can get so many data, and you do the content analysis. And again, it depends on how you design the research. If you want to do the qualitative data and use quantitative data to support it, so what the data, when you deal with the content analysis here in doing the qualitative method, so you need to plan ahead, like 16 weeks here, which week, what time you need the data, blah blah blah, and what time, which week you need to test them, to see some progress, to see the improvement of the writing ability. That is about the planning, and it depends on the data that you have in your hand, that you ask the student to do it for you.
Okay, very good. And I think it depends on how do you define the word improvement too.
Yes, it depends on the data that you are dealing with. I mean, if you ask a student to write reflexive journals and you don't limit the words, for example, some student may give you just only 2 lines or 3 lines, but some may give you 1 page long. So that is very problematic because how can you compare? How can you make sure the qualitative data? But it depends on your design. Depends on how you encourage the students to to write it, to give you the data.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Ajahn Attapol, for your talk. If do you mind if I ask you to stop sharing the screen, and then I can go to the next PowerPoint? Thank you, sir.
Let me.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay. Stop sharing. Okay. Yes.
Alrighty. So let's see. Okay. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Assistant Professor Khamkhien, again for giving this such a wonderful and useful talk on quantitative and qualitative content analysis. What is coding? We learned a lot about what is the content analysis, how do we code it, how do we categorize it, and then find a theme. And my favorite part is to use the technologies to help with this qualitative data things, so make it easier and more reliable. So thank you very much for your insight talk and your generosity. Thank you so much, Ajahn.
Thank you, Claude. Thank you, everyone.
Very much.
Thank you very much. And once again, our next session, this will be on Saturday, June 27 and Sunday, June 28. We have Ajahn Willie and Ajahn Unsan Park, who's going to give a talk on top 10 habits of successful learners of English. And that will be on Saturday, June 27 at 10 to 12. And also on Sunday, June 28, Professor Paul Nation will give a talk on what matters in vocabulary learning, also at the same time, 10 to 12. So don't miss this great opportunity. And if you have already enrolled, so please stay tuned. We already provide you the link from Litu, but we co-organize with them. So they just provide a platform, but we're the host for these 2 great webinar sessions. So thank you again for your participation, and I hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Yes.
Does Ajahn Attapol has an email? I mean,
Yes. I can send you Ajahn Attapol's email, so you can ask some more questions.
That's my name and surname@gmail.com. It's an odd.
Okay. Thank you.
Can we have a group photo before we go, please?
Oh, I forgot about that. Thank you. Okay. So let's see. Let me stop sharing here.
สวัสดีค่ะพี่บิ๋มสวัสดีค่ะ
อาจารย์สวัสดีครับ
แต่ธุระ
สวัสดี
เล
ค่ะ
ย
สวัสดี
มา
ค่ะ
ทีหลัง
No problem at all.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm ready now. Okay. 1, 2. Okay, one more. 1, 2. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. อาจารย์ครับ